The retro survival horror aesthetic has been thriving in the indie space, and it's easy to see why. Games like Crow Country and Alyssa build on the genre's roots with modern systems and clever mechanics, keeping the mood intact while smoothing out the rough edges, or maybe in some cases introducing new ones. Heartworm from developer Vincent Adinolfi takes a different path. Rather than chasing those modernized touches, it leans heavily into environmental exploration and puzzle solving, putting me in that same confusing headspace that I was in the first time I played Resident Evil. There is plenty here for fans to dive into, yet unfocused elements keep this experience from reaching the promise of its opening moments. Heartworm introduces us to Sam, a young woman drawn to occult conspiracies after the death of her grandfather. Her search leads to a strange house rumored to be connected to the afterlife. From there, she discovers a reality-bending space known as the Archives, which acts as a hub for the remainder of the game. The premise suggests a journey through Sam's memories, but the narrative rarely capitalizes on the complexities of her life. It touches on friends, family, school, and work, and then stops short of digging into any of these. Notes scattered around the world hint at a deeper story that I wish had been more present in the main narrative, if only to tie each beat together with clear intent. An early moment shows what could have been, where an entity chases you into the archives through a sequence that feels ripe for a recurring threat. It honestly reminded me of Mr. X from Resident Evil, the kind of pressure that keeps tension high as you move through spaces you thought were safe. That idea never materializes though. Instead, you move through memories with very little context. The framework itself leaves room for exposition that would deepen the areas you explore, yet the game mostly asks you to accept these places as abstract reflections of Sam's past. That said, the structure itself is pretty straightforward, with 3 main sections and a final stretch. Oddly, only 2 of those areas have bosses, and endings are tied to special hidden photographs that are found in each area, and depending on how many you find will determine the ending that you get. The thin narrative would be less of a concern if the environmental storytelling consistently filled the gap. In a few places it does, where lore can be pieced together through set dressing and optional notes, though this demands extra attention during long stretches of exploration. Navigation itself can also test your patience. Areas are large, puzzles skew cryptic, and backtracking is frequent. You will likely get lost or second guess your next steps at least one time, but thankfully the map helps by marking rooms that are cleared, which saves headaches, and series veterans will probably settle into the rhythm faster than newcomers. It should be said that Heartworm does wear its influences on its sleeves and expects you to enjoy getting lost, checking rooms again, and thinking through puzzle chains. Enemies mostly exist to slow you down. They are more of an obstacle than a source of fear here, especially when you're making a third trek across an area because you forgot a switch or an item, and they just get annoying. This aligns with the game's emphasis on exploration and puzzle design, though it also reduces combat to a chore during cleanup runs. I rarely felt threatened, but I often felt delayed. That balance favors players who love the methodical side of the genre and are happy to treat combat as a brief interruption. Combat itself has a clear hook though. Sam uses her camera to take down enemies, which feels like a nod to Fatal Frame to me, and yes, it probably is. The best part of all of this is the perspective shift. You move from a static camera to a first-person view when you raise the camera, and that transition is really smooth. Each area introduces 1 or 2 enemy types, but they don't leave much of an impression. I kept wondering what these enemies were meant to represent. Are they memories that I'm supposed to be destroying, people who were lost here, or guardians of the archives? If the game explains this, then I missed it. In practice, the enemies are simply obstacles, and they rarely pose a significant threat. The dogs, on the other hand, are obvious exceptions, when they can and will catch you off guard. The boss lineup leaves a similar impression here. The third main area doesn't even have a boss. Instead, it just leads into the finale without a satisfying build-up. The bosses who are present feel disconnected from the entire story. There's a giant spider and a deer that show up, but these exist more as thematic punctuations than as meaningful encounters that reflect Sam's inner life. I wanted the bosses to anchor each section and give the areas a distinct identity. They don't quite get there though. I still had fun in the moment, yet the ambition at play sometimes works against the game's best ideas. You can see the ambition in the number of systems that go underused. The lighter you get at the beginning of the game is only used in one section. Camera mods exist, yet the game rarely requires them. Item combining is present, but outside of a handful of puzzles, solutions, and healing items, there's little reason to engage with it. None of this breaks the experience, though it does create the feeling of unfulfilled potential. The camera weapon itself stands out the most in these systems. The static to first-person swap is a great trick, and I kept waiting for the design to push it further with enemy behaviors or a new weapon design or even boss patterns that demand creative camera use, but it never happens. Even with these pain points, I still liked a lot about Heartworm. The puzzles are clever and often cryptic in satisfying ways. A few stumped me for a while because the solutions are genuinely creative, not because the logic is unfair. This is one of those games where solving the puzzles makes you feel smart, which is exactly what fans of the genre want. The level design supports non-linear routes through each area, and there are plenty of interactable objects that trigger Sam's inner thoughts. This ultimately adds texture to rooms you will visit more than once, and it keeps exploration from becoming too routine. Beating the game unlocks costumes, which was enough incentive for me to chase additional playthroughs. Presentation for me is another highlight, where you can choose between modern and retro visual modes. I spent most of my time in the retro filter because it suits the tone, and it does sell the throwback aesthetic without feeling like a gimmick. The soundtrack does a lot of the heavy lifting here. It sets the mood, builds atmosphere, and gives quiet corridors an uneasy hum. Atmosphere is critical for survival horror, and Heartworm nails that piece with confidence. In the end, Heartworm is an ambitious retro survival horror game that gets the fundamentals right. The controls feel responsive, the presentation effectively conveys the tone, and the overall game flow aligns with what the genre requires. The more unique elements are less successful. The camera as a weapon is a strong concept that never fully blossoms, and several systems feel underutilized. Even so, I couldn't stop playing the game. The puzzles are challenging in a fair way, the environments are gorgeous, and the shorter runtime makes repeat runs manageable. That encourages you to unlock more costumes or search for additional context in the story. The perspective shift from static to first-person camera remains a standout idea that deserves recognition, even if the act of combat isn't as exciting as the system that enables it. And for that, Noisy Pixel is giving Heartworm a 6 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.